Hello everyone, Chef Matt here in Denver at the Culinary Scene with Roth Living, and today I want to welcome everyone to the ownership experience where we're going to talk about your Wolf ovens, the E-Series, M-Series, and the dual fuel ovens and how those work. So we're going to go through and explain each mode in detail. We're going to talk about how to care for it as well, cleaning, maintenance, and we're going to show you some things, some examples throughout the class of what your oven can do so that you can really get the most out of your product. I will give you credit. You are smart for tuning in and finding out what you've got the capabilities to do in your home kitchen, because once you understand how your ovens work, you're really going to have a great time cooking and just enjoying your time in the kitchen, and it really is going to elevate your experience as far as what you can do in your home kitchen, okay? So I do want to start out by saying that we are able to field some questions via the chat feature. If you have registered with YouTube and have an account, you will be able to enter some questions that we can answer along the way. Now, also, if you're not able to, for some reason, you are welcome to email me at the Kansas City branch. That's where I'm based out of, and they can give you that number or my email here at the corporate headquarters. All right, so let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about the versatility of your oven and what you can do with it. Okay, so I want you to think of it as an oven that has several different avenues to heat or to transfer heat to your food. What is cooking? It's basically transferring heat from the oven to your food to cook it. Now, in a non-scientific manner, what we want to understand is where the heat's coming from on each mode, so that will help us make some decisions on what we want to do. I will tell you, there are so many different ways to cook some things. There are some things there are some modes that are going to help you excel in specific styles of cooking. There are some also very general modes that you'll be able to really customize and make your own. I'm going to give you some experiences, some examples today of my experience having it at work, also cooking with my family in our home and what we do. This might differ a little bit from your lifestyle, but it will help you kind of understand and hopefully adapt to what you want to do in your own home, okay? So let's start off with, we're going to talk about the rack system in the oven. So this oven has been off, so I'm able to take these racks in and out. Now on your E-Series and M-Series ovens and your dual fuel ovens, you're going to have 2 full extension racks, and you're going to have 1 standard rack that still comes out 60% of the way, okay? And all of these do lock into place when they come out, okay? Now, the standard rack simply lifts over a little ball bearing on the bottom that holds it in place right here, okay? And there's a little gap in between the wires right here that allow you to feed that back on to that side wire and back in. The full extension rack, it's going to come out like this. You can do it 2 ways. You can lift it like this and start to pull it out, catch it from both sides, and kind of reel those side guides in, okay? To replace it, we simply feed that end cartridge over the wire, push it back into place, push it down to make sure that it's locked in. Another way that you can remove that is to lift the entire cartridge while it's in the oven and bring that out, okay? So more than one way to take that out. To put it back in, we're simply going to extend those arms and over that wire, once again, just pushing it back in. Make sure that we've got it locked in. I do also want to point out that when we're cleaning the oven, whether we're talking about manual cleaning, just with some soap and some sponges, whatever that might be, we're going to remove the racks, and we're going to lift off these side racks as well. That's why I'm covering this. I'm going to talk about cleaning later, but removing the racks on the side is as simple as lifting and pulling out. you'll see a screw in the corners of where that shelf is attached. However, you do not need to unscrew those. Those guides simply lift off and come out, okay? Very easy to maintain and to move racks around. You do want to know that because you might be cooking something where you only need a single rack. We'll talk about the bake stone in a little bit, and on the stone mode, you only use one rack. So you'll want to know how to remove those other two racks. If you're roasting a turkey for Thanksgiving, if you're doing a big roast for the holidays, that's something that you'll want to know. Please remember to remove it before you start to preheat the oven. It's just a lot easier to handle those racks when they're cool. If not, make sure you use some towels, all right? I also want to point out the oven's probe system. This is for helping you monitor the temperature when you're cooking proteins, okay? I actually did a video on baked potatoes on the gourmet mode, so we even used it for a baked potato, but primarily I think of the temperature probe as being used for internal temps on proteins that we're cooking, larger roasts that we want to make sure that we're nailing that temperature, that we're getting to that level that we want as far as the internal temperature. So if we're wanting to roast a chicken, we might be setting it at 160, 165. You know, we've got temps for prime rib, for tenderloin, all these different things. It's going to allow you to monitor it so you can cook the roast or the turkeys, whatever it might be, to the perfect temp. Now, what you do want to know is that the port for plugging the probe in on all of your ovens is going to be top left right here in front. And I'll plug this one in just to show you where it is, okay? Just like that. All right. So we'll talk a little bit more about the probe in a little while. I want to go ahead and start off with talking about the modes of the ovens and how we're going to use those. So let's start off with the basics, all right? Bake mode. Bake mode is a mode that you're going to use the center of the oven, center rack. So let's open up the oven for a second. So I'm going to be in position 4, and I'm not going to, if we're talking about cakes, pies, any baked goods especially, we want to be careful not to use the bottom shelf or the top shelf, and I'll tell you why. All of the heat is coming from the hidden element below this bottom plate. So the bottom of the oven is getting extremely hot to heat the oven. It's going to be so hot that cookies or pies or some baked goods will definitely burn if they're on the bottom rack. On the top rack, you know, heat rises significantly before it bounces back and evens out in the center of the oven. So what can happen when you're baking on the top rack is that you get a heat bounce off the top of the oven, and it's going to over brown a lot of your baked goods because it's just too hot up there. The most even heat is going to be in the center of the oven when you're in bake mode, okay? Now, bake mode is ideal for some cookies, cakes, brownies, pies. There are so many different things that you're going to use bake for. There will also be some things that you'll want to use roast or convection and some of the other modes for. You know, when we get to talking about one of the modes, I don't know that you'll ever bake a pizza again when you know what stone mode is and how it works, okay? So next, let's move to roast. So roast mode is using a mixture of top and bottom heat, more significantly from the top than from the bottom of the oven. And as a result, you get a really beautiful browning crust on your poultries and your larger roasts. So the broil element is heating the oven by pulsing on and off. It's not broiling the food, but it is a main heat source for that mode. So when are you going to use roast mode? So we're going to talk about convection roast in a minute, but I'm planting the seed with you. So if what we're making, the dish we're making for dinner or for an event starts with the word roast, roast chicken, roast beef, roast tenderloin, roast pork rack, roast vegetables, okay? any of these dishes that start with the word roast, yes, you're going to consider that mode. Why? Because it's going to do a better job of caramelization of the outside of your roast, of your vegetables, of your meats, whatever that might be. Now, in roast mode, it is going to ask you if you want to use the probe or not. You don't have to use the probe. You can just cancel that out, okay? But you have the ability to use that in roast mode and in convection roast, okay? So it is an intelligent oven in that it wants to know if you're roasting meats and if it can help in any way by using that thermometer. Now, when we are using the thermometer in a roast, we want to make sure that we're using that last inch of the probe is going to be inserted in the thickest part of the roast, and that needle has to be buried like this inside that roast so that there's none of the metal shaft showing. The reason why is that oven can superheat that metal shaft and ultimately give it a false reading. Might have some roast chicken in the oven for 10 minutes, and if you didn't get that needle in just right, then it might tell you the chicken's done. Well, there's no way the chicken's going to be done in 10 minutes. So you put that back in, and then you watch the temperature drop on your probe setting on the oven. That's going to tell you what's going on. Okay? Now, on roast mode, I really think of roast mode as a mode that is going to excel at slower roasting, cuts of meat, roasts, turkey, things that are larger that they do require more time to cook for tenderness and for juiciness, okay? So what I think of, for example, would be a prime rib, a large roast beef, a big bone-in ham, turkey at Thanksgiving, okay? These are all things. Now, some of those might be low temp, like a prime rib down in the low 200s. Turkey might be up around 375, a little bit hotter, okay? Still cooking it for a longer amount of time rather than quick and concise to where it doesn't get that tenderness crossed over. We don't speed cook a prime rib, we slow roast it. Even turkey, we want to take our time to make sure that is a large bird that we are roasting. We want to make sure it has time to get nice and tender so that it's enjoyable when it is ready. All right? So, roast is a great go-to. Now let's talk about convection roast, okay? Gil, why don't you hand those to me? Gil and I just knocked out, we did some convection roasted. These are some honey glazed chicken thighs, okay? So, simplicity. A chicken thigh has a tenderness of its own. It doesn't need to be slow roasted. It would be mushy if it was slow roasted. We want to crisp the skin. We want to render some fat out of the skin. We want some browning, okay? When we enter into the convection arena, okay, the convection modes are going to excel at browning, crisping, caramelization. So using something like convection roast for smaller pieces of chicken, chicken thighs, chicken wings, those are going to be best served with that mode, okay? What's the difference between doing those on convection roast? Over bake, browning, crisping, caramelization, crunchy skin, okay? Also, the speed at which they're done. So when we add convection, we speed up the cooking process. We are done in a shorter amount of time. Excuse me. Now, when we're talking about vegetables, we did some fingerling potatoes and some asparagus, okay? That is also something that we do on convection roast. It really does a beautiful job of crisping up your smaller potatoes or chunked up potatoes, as well as broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, many of your vegetables that are bite-sized vegetables. They get really nice and crispy brown on that convection roast mode. Now, I will tell you, this is important, okay? We're going to talk about spacing. So if we're roasting a turkey or a prime rib for Thanksgiving or for the holidays, we're going to remove these two top racks. We're going to roast on the bottom rack. We want to be a little ways away from that top heat source, okay? We don't want to get too brown on the crown of the turkey too fast. The prime rib is going to get a really nice crust on it, even though it's that far away, because the prime rib's going to be in there for probably 6 or 7 hours, okay? Prime rib takes a long time to slow roast, but the result is phenomenal, okay? Now, when we're doing potatoes and vegetables, we can be up in the top rack, okay? We're going to get the benefit of heat from the top as well as from the fans behind the wall with convection roast. The thighs and chicken wings, things like that, those are probably going to get this rack removed and do them in the mid part. We want them to cook and to get crispy brown, but we don't want those too close to the broiler element to where they start to brown before the internal's cooked, okay? So that gives you an idea on some spacing of what you're doing, okay? Now, we've talked about roast and roast and bake and convection roast. Now, I want to circle back to convection. Convection is a mode where all of the heat is coming from behind the wall where the fan system is and no heat on the top or the bottom. Now, what am I going to use convection for? You're going to be able to use it for, if you're doing multiple layers of potatoes and some smaller vegetables, chicken pieces, skin on, things like that, you can actually use convection as well in a higher temp and do multiple racks. The reason why is there is no hot or cold spot on convection mode because all of that heat coming from behind the wall really evens out and makes all 3 shelves equal. So I know that there's some people out there that are saying, well, you know what? We had a convection oven in the past and it burned my cookies when I tried to use it, or it burned my cake. I'm just not sure what I'm doing. It's intimidating. I'm not sure. So let's start off with this. Not every recipe works with convection. Some recipes just need more time in the oven to cook slower and develop more flavor in different ways. On the things that we want some browning and some crisping, convection is a nice alternative. But convection needs to follow 2 guidelines. If you're going to convert a recipe that doesn't call for convection initially. So we will use the chocolate chip cookie method, for example. So if I have a recipe of chocolate chip cookie dough that it tells me to scoop them out on a sheet tray, and then you're going to bake them off 350 degrees for 16 minutes. So I want a little bit more of a brown edge around the cookies. I'm gonna use convection. I want a little bit of crisping outside on the top too. I just like that crunch on the outside and the tender crumb on the inside. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop my temperature to 325, so 25 degrees in temperature drop, especially for baked goods. Not crucial on roasting chicken or vegetables, but crucial on the other, okay? Now, also, I need to adjust my time, so I'm not gonna bake those cookies for 16 minutes. I'm gonna bake them for 12 minutes. I can always add a minute if I need to. I can't subtract a minute off a cookie. So you wanna make sure that you're adjusting time and temperature, 25, 25, okay? 25 degrees, 25%. Following that guideline, I think you'll be pretty impressed with what your oven can do. To use, for example, I will make cream puffs regularly or some cheese puffs. That is pâte à choux or choux paste, which can be a little tricky to work with in an oven because if you just have a standard oven, a lot of times people are switching trays around, hot and cold spots, and that can make cream puffs or pâte à choux fall, okay, and become flat. They lose the air that's built up or the steam that's built up in those puffs, and they're a failure, okay? With the cream puffs on that convection setting, I will set it at 350, 375, depending on what recipe I'm doing, and leave them in there untouched for a half hour. Come back, and they are beautifully browned and even all 3 trays. So, you know, the bake sale that little Cindy has that she sprung on you, she needs some cookies for something coming up at school or church, whatever it might be. You can knock out 3 trays of puffs, 3 trays of cookies, really easy. And when you're using convection, remember, you're cutting back on your time too. So you're going to be faster and you can do 3 trays at once. Now, we talked about some things we don't want to do on convection, like the cheesecake I made today. I don't want to do that on convection. I don't want to hurry cheesecake along. I want that more slow and low. I want the flavor to develop. I want a nice crust around the outside, but I don't necessarily want it all browned, okay? So cheesecake is a great example of baking. When we go into cookies, vegetables, different things, that allows us to play around with that convection mode as well, okay? So convection, don't be intimidated by it. It could be one of your favorite modes if you just trust it, play around with it, see how it works for what you want to cook at home, and if it's going to give you that extra browning, crisping, or caramelization, all right? Now, when we go over to broil, broil is going to give you the ability to brown or to broil at 3 different levels. These are all above 400 degrees, so these are all very intense broil systems or modes. I will tell you that you do not need to preheat on broil. You're simply going to put the food in and then go to broil and start. All right? No preheat needed. Set the broil level you need, and you're not going to prop the door open on this mode because the oven evacuates the heat that it does not need. It's not going to, quote, bake anything in there. It's going to do its job of broiling, and that's it. If you leave the door open too long, other than to take it out and rotate it, do something, you might get an error code that shuts that oven off, and then you have to restart it, okay? But very effective for doing an onion soup gratin, broiling fresh fish, steaks, chops, vegetables, lots of different things you can do with that broil mode. All right? Now, when we go to one of the next modes, proof. So proof is used for yeast products or yeast doughs. So when we think about bread doughs, breads are leavened with yeast. Also cinnamon rolls. There are some different baked goods that need to, after they are mixed, they need to rise or to proof or to double in shape before they're baked off. So proof gives you a temperature zone from 85 to 110 degrees. That's important because yeast will die if it's submitted to 115 degrees for longer than a specific short amount of time. It needs to be baked or in that proofing safe zone below 110 degrees. So they don't allow your oven to heat up past 110 degrees. Now, in that mode, say you've got some rolls in proofing or some cinnamon rolls or a loaf of bread, and you want to check it, you're not going to be able to turn on the light to see the results. You're just going to have to open the door because in that mode, the lights are disabled so that it doesn't continue to heat up the cabinet. Engineers understand that the lights in there can add a few degrees of temperature to the oven, so those are disabled in that mode. Okay, nothing wrong with your oven in proof. When the light doesn't come on, it's just disabled. Okay, so now why would I use proof over just doing something on a countertop? Countertop, I will give you an example. I do a recipe for classic French bread, and that French bread can take anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours to rise at room temperature at 70 degrees, 72 degrees. However, if I've got it in the oven on proof at 95 degrees, that same loaf of bread will proof or double in size in about an hour and a half. So it comes close to cutting the time in half on how long it takes to proof that bread. I found that the grain or the open sponge of the inside of your bread really is much more superior, if you will, if it's proofed quicker, because that just allows the yeast to act more aggressively and open up and create more pockets inside that dough, which is actually what we want with a good bread, okay? So proof is one of those hidden little gems that I think you'll really enjoy. Now, warm mode, Warm mode is from 140 degrees, which is your starting safe temperature for hot prepared foods. We don't drop below 140. We can go hotter, but we don't go any cooler than 140. And that's going to give you the ability to, once you have prepared something, hold it. If you weren't using the oven currently, it's going to give you the ability to hold that at a nice temperature so that the food is hot while you're finishing a sauce, a soup, a side that might be going with the meal. So 140 is your starting point for something like if you roasted a beef tenderloin in one of your other ovens or that one and it's cooled off enough, you could hold that tenderloin at 140. I wouldn't go much hotter, okay? It's not really gonna move the needle on the doneness on 140, but going to 150, 155, 160 for something like lasagna, whipped potatoes. I call them more durable foods that just, they're not gonna overcook or lose any quality if they're a little bit hotter. And generally you like potatoes and lasagna and things like that a little bit hotter anyway, then you can go up a little bit, okay? Now, when we go to, there is a more category in your E-Series. It's spelled out in your M-Series and in the dual fuel range. It's also on the dial as more. You have Connect. Connect is how you will follow the directions on the oven and you will install the app on your phone, the Sub-Zero Wolf app. You'll register on there, register your product that you have, and then you'll be able to control different functions of the oven with that app. Okay, yes, you will be able to do a pre-start when certain safety precautions are done ahead of time. The use and care guide does walk you through how to do that. Okay, Roth Living has their use and care guide for all of our products, and this walks you through step by step on some of those procedures. Now, also and more, we're going to find Dehydrate. So Dehydrate is going to give you the ability to, using some screens like this is the Wolf dehydration screen. You can start with a baker's mode. You could do apple slices on the Wolf roasting pan that you got with your oven, okay? Banana slices, play around with that. But with the screens over a sheet pan, you're able to make your own beef jerky, pork jerky, dried fruits, dried citrus. I would stay away from herbs. Herbs need to be irradiated, so those aren't really something that's safe to do in this oven. Also, the fans are just gonna blow those dry herbs all over your oven and make a mess. So more for jerky, for a lot of things you do with the dehydration mode. The biggest difference is this is gonna be significantly faster because these are much more powerful fans than the little countertop units that a lot of people play around with in their homes. Now, we talked about having the door closed with broil. With Dehydrate, we do need the door open so that moisture can escape as we've got that airflow over what we're cooking Dehydrate, all right? Now your temperature mode on Dehydrate is gonna be in the mid 200s from about 120 to 160, all right? Follow your recipe guidelines for what it calls for. You might start checking the doneness of them a little bit earlier, probably 25% earlier to start and see if it needs any more time, all right? And if you don't have the Wolf dehydrating screens and you're just playing around with a roasting rack or a baker's rack on top of a sheet pan, okay, there is a orange rubber grommet that comes with that dehydration kit that holds the door ajar, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So a little trick that we like to pass on is you can do a wine cork and simply set that at the top of the door there just to hold it open and ajar so moisture can escape, okay? So little chef tip that'll get you on the way to playing around with the Dehydrate mode and having some fun with that. We did a fruit leather recipe for the Culinary Scene recently, and that was something that my kids like to do at home, is to make some homemade fruit leather with simply some kind of fresh or frozen fruit, and honey as a sweetener instead of sugar or corn syrup. They make a healthy fruit leather, and then they cook it off, roll it up, put it in bags, take it for a little snack for lunch, and it's a big hit. Okay? Now, another mode that we're going to find on the more, and it's going to show up in the regular category on your M series, but it's going to be in more category on your dual fuel range dial and on the E series, is going to be stone mode. So stone mode is using intense top heat, intense bottom heat, and convection from behind the wall. Now I want to talk to you about what that's doing. So if I go to my favorite pizzeria or spot in Kansas City called Spin Pizza, love their pizzas, okay? These are Neapolitan style crisp crust pizzas, okay? They take a matter of about 6 minutes to bake off, and they're phenomenal. Super crunchy crust, all the toppings are caramelized, the cheese is all bubbly and yummy. And if I'm looking at their oven and what's going on with it, the oven is going to be up around 600 degrees, and it's going to be giving flames from the back, which are heating the dome. Also, that heat is naturally circulating around and heating the bottom plate as well as some heat coming from the bottom, and I've got natural convection. So your oven is actually mimicking what that hearth oven in my favorite pizzeria is doing. It's got top heat, it's got bottom heat, and it's got circulation, okay, or convection. The result is you get to cook some phenomenal pizzas. Now, I will show you, this is a pizza that Chef Gil baked off for me just before class. Look at the caramelization on the pizza. Just beautiful. This was 7 minutes, okay, for a 12-inch pizza. So we had the pizza baked on stone mode at 550 degrees. So 550 degrees, I'm really close to my favorite pizzeria's hearth oven. And Wolf does have a bake stone accessory. This is a gently used bake stone. Okay, you see how thick it is? It's close to 1 inch thick. And how it can handle the heat from the bottom of the oven is key. I will tell you, you're welcome to use your bake stone if you have one at home. If it's thinner than a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, then you need to place it in the center of the oven. Take these 2 racks out. If you're using the Wolf bake stone, or if you're using a thicker bake stone like this, you're going to take the 2 top racks out and simply place it in the bottom. Okay? That stone goes into the oven and heats up with the oven. Because that stone absorbs the heat as that oven is heating up, it's going to take longer than normal to preheat that oven. This is a sponge for heat. So I would expect about 45 minutes for that oven to heat all the way up to 550. But you want to know this, that stone is 550 degrees as well, and that stone can take the heat when it's that thick. That's why we put the thinner stones in the center of the oven, just to protect them from too intense a heat. It could crack them. We don't have that danger with the thicker stones. Now, you can do a larger pizza like this on the stone. You can do little individual pizzas like this. My family loves to do pizza parties for family get-togethers. We do it once a month as a family, where we'll either make a batch of pizza dough the day before, or if you're not savvy to making a pizza dough, there are so many different markets that you can pick up pizza dough from, already made, and simply take it. The biggest rule I will tell you on pizza dough is don't take it and start folding it over itself and trying to re-knead it. Take it out of the package and just start stretching it, okay? So you will bake that off in the oven, and I will tell you, it is so wildly popular, the phenomenal pizzas that you can make in your own home. Out of all the years that I've been a chef, when I've done different fancy meals for family and friends, when it came to their favorite, oh, what's your favorite? What do you guys want to do this year? Of can we do the pizza again? I really like the pizza we make at your house, because they got to customize it and make it their own. But also they said it was one of the best pizzas they've tasted. I chalk that up to the Bake Stone and the Bake Stone method, not to my pizza dough recipe, not to any toppings I put on it. It's to what that Bake Stone mode does to your pizza, and even a take and bake pizza. So if you have a favorite take and bake that you get on a paper board, and that normally goes on a rack in the oven. So 425 is a popular temperature for some take and bakes. So I do my take and bake at 500 degrees, and I still use the stone, but about 3 or 4 minutes in, that crust is cooked, and then I will take and put the pizza peel in between the crust and the paper board and wiggle that paper board out. Oh, now I'm baking pizza directly on the Bake Stone. That's a take and bake pizza. I will tell you, it totally elevates that take and bake to a whole new experience. My teenagers were ecstatic when they tried that for the first time. They were like, wow, this is like totally different, Dad. We love this. So what else can you do on the Bake Stone and in stone mode? So crostatas or freeform tarts are very nice. However, with that, you're going to be in the low 400s more than likely, and you still need to use some parchment paper, because on the crostata and the tart doughs, those have butter in them. They're not a yeast dough. That butter likes to melt right into the stone and get a little smoky. So leave that dessert that you built on the parchment, set the parchment on the stone. I will tell you, it makes some of the best crostatas you've ever had in your life, and galettes. So have some fun doing that as well. Bread, if you like to make artisan breads that are baked directly on a stone, phenomenal avenue for that as well. So I do a sourdough that I bake on the stone at about 500 degrees. And it comes out beautiful, blistered and crunchy and just delicious. So the Bake Stone mode is one of those hidden modes that I think you're going to turn into one of your favorites. All right? Now, we've gone through all of the main modes. I want to show you gourmet and what gourmet is real quick. All right? Gourmet is a assistance of sorts, in that if you're not sure how you want to cook your beef tenderloin or your prime rib or some poultry, it helps you along. So we're going to use, for example, we're going to use a beef tenderloin. We touch gourmet, we're going to touch meat, beef, we're going to scroll over to tenderloin, and we'll do the tenderloin medium rare, and done. And it's telling me that I'm going to remove the top rack. That second rack's going to be in position 3, and there's no preheat needed. It's going to use convection roast at 450 degrees with the probe inserted, and it's going to let me know when that tenderloin's done with that probe, and I'm going to pull it out, and it recommends to let it rest for 10 minutes. Okay? Then I simply hit start. Okay? That's it. So besides meats, there are baked goods. Now, baked goods, the oven will need to be preheated, because most of your baked goods react off of heat when they have a leavener like baking soda or baking powder. So they need that initial heat to hit it. But something like a baked potato I talked about earlier, there's baked potatoes programmed into gourmet. You put the probe into one of your baked potatoes on the tray for dinner, and it monitors and tells you when the center of that baked potato is done. And don't you hate it when you make some baked potatoes and they're still rock hard in the middle, like all the outside's perfectly cooked, but then the center is still a stone, and you're like, I got to cut around it. Okay, so even little things like vegetables and potatoes, it can be of assistance at. So play around with the gourmet mode. You might find that some of those are very useful for you. Now, when we talk about a mode such as clean, clean is not a cooking mode. Clean is for cleaning the oven, and this is a mode that is recommended to use very sparingly. It is effective. It does a good job at what it does. It incinerates all of the food or grime built up on the inside of the oven. It's going up close to 900 degrees in 4 hours time between a heat up and a cool down. You're going to need about 4 hours with the ventilation on, and it's going to burn off everything inside the oven. But you need to know this. In clean mode, this is something that, like I said, should be used sparingly, once, maybe twice a year. You do need to remove all the racks, including the side guides. It is recommended that you wipe everything out of the bottom, so if there's chunks of food or debris, go ahead and get those out of there. It'll just be less smoke, okay? And that oven is going to lock itself during that process, so nobody can open the oven or get to it, okay? Now, self-clean you don't have to use. It is there if you want to, but highly recommended to use sparingly, okay? Now, to clean your oven besides with using self-clean, when we're talking about topical cleaning, here's the key to getting ovens clean easily. The more often you clean the oven, the easier it will be to clean the oven. If you had a spill in there from some roasting chicken or something that's spilled on the bottom, maybe making some pizza, and you leave it for several months, each time you fire up the oven, it just continues to bake it on there. So the sooner you get it out of there, the easier it's going to be to remove. Now, you can use a flat scraping razor at a very low angle to chip off stuck-on food, okay? That's more solid-like, okay? When we're talking about getting something off that's more of a stain or a spot, I want you to think about using cleaning agents, not elbow grease, okay? Not hard scrubbing. We want the agents to clean that off, okay? And you can use something such as Barkeeper's Friend with a little bit of water, okay? We've also got all-purpose cleaners, okay? Dawn, also Bon Ami. Now, these are topical cleaners that are going to take off mild stains. They're going to do a good job for what they do. If your oven has not been cleaned for a while and you're just having trouble getting it clean with a milder cleaning agent, then you might need to use a residential spray degreaser, okay? And a residential spray degreaser, there's Mr. Clean, there's Kaboom, there's all sorts of different products out there. Easy off, I'm not going to give you any one endorsement on one of them. I will tell you, the ones that you find at the supermarket, those are a residential spray degreaser. The main thing you're going to need to be careful of is when you're using any kind of spray, you're not spraying back into the fan ports or into the slots at the bottom, at the back of the oven. Anywhere you have holes where there's airflow coming through, then I would use a utility paintbrush that is dipped in or sprayed with that chemical and then brush it on, okay? That's going to give you that adherence on there so it can do its job and then go back over it with a sponge. To just spray it throughout the back, you're going to get some agents back in there that you just don't want those back in there that you can't remove, okay? And as far as the top, the bottom, the sides, the top is a broiler element that's going to burn off everything. You don't really have to worry about that. The door itself, I do want to point out that you see these ports at the top of the door, okay? And on the other oven series, you might have ports on the face right here. These are not inside the oven. This gasket right here is where the seal starts. So that's actually this rim right here. That is the inside of the oven. That's what's going to get a little bit of food stain on it, okay, and the glass. This out here is going to get nothing unless you've spilled some food on it. Avoid getting any soapy water or suds or cleaning agents in these ports because this is the breathing space for the two window panes on your oven. And if you get it in there and this goes up, you get drips down the inside of your window of your door. And I know that bothers a lot of people to get those drips in there. And the only way to get it out is to call local service certified service and ask them to come over and take your door apart so you can get that out. So avoid that. Avoid soap up here. Just stay where you've got that food stain, okay? Now, as far as the window, same cleaning agents. If you need to scrape this at all, you can use that flat razor I told you about on this as well. A mild cleaner that works well on the glass can also be found. The glass cooktop cleaner actually works very well on that glass door. The outside is going to be Windex or spray glass cleaners, and then we've also got stainless steel polishes. Stay away from oil-based stainless steel polishes. You want something that's more water-based. It's not going to show as many fingerprints over time, okay? Now, that's how we clean the inside of it. The rack system. How do we go about cleaning the racks? So there's a formula called Carbona. So this is used as an example of what you can do. These will fit 30-inch racks. What that is a giant Ziploc with cleaning agent that you put on the racks, and then you close it and you let that sit for a while. By keeping the cleaning agent from drying out, it's more active, so the result is the racks are much easier to clean, all right? So I will tell you a trick. I have a 36-inch range, so my racks don't fit in that. So this is something that I've done 4 years in the restaurant business. We will take a large lawn and leaf or a big black heavy-duty trash bag, put it in the sink, or I actually do this outside. I take it out to my patio, okay? But lay the trash bag out, and then I put the oven racks in there and just spray them like crazy with some spray degreaser, close it up. I walk away for 7 or 8 hours. I come back, take them out. I use some gloves when I'm handling them. I take them back out, but literally with hot soapy water and a sponge, all the grime simply just washes away. So keeping the cleaner active, huge, okay? That will really make them easier to clean. Once they're clean, they go back in there, and I will tell you, if you're expecting to roast something or cook something that you know is gonna be a little bit messy, you're gonna get some splatter, if you don't need the racks, take them out. If they're not in there, they can't get dirty, okay? So that's a little chef tip from me as well. So now, we talked about all of the different modes. We talked about how to clean manually as well as using the self-clean mode, all right? And we've given you some ideas on how to use the roasting pan. So we roasted the chicken thighs, the honey glazed chicken thighs on the roasting pan, right? Did a pork rack earlier today on the roasting pan. This is a favorite pan of mine because 2 reasons. It elevates my protein, so when I'm roasting them, they get crispy all around. That airflow gets all around them. Number 2, it's a porcelain lined pan, so it's really easy to clean up as well. If it's not coming clean right away, put some dish detergent in there, hot soapy water, let it set for about 15 minutes, and it literally just wipes super clean. Really easy to take care of. All right? So I hope I gave you some good examples of different ways to use your Wolf dual convection ovens, whether it be the E-Series, the M-Series, the dual fuel oven. These are phenomenal ovens that you're gonna get so much fun and so much use out of, and I really think you're gonna have a blast in your home kitchen playing around with these modes now that you understand what your oven can do, all right? So, do we have any questions that have popped up? I don't think we have, okay. Well, I'm gonna end the session today. Like I said, if you'd like to contact me at the Kansas City showroom, I'll be back on Wednesday. Feel more than free to give me a call or can send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Chef Ben and Gil here in Denver also. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you had a good time and you were able to take some information away that's gonna just help you to have a great time in your home kitchen, okay? Thanks for joining me today, and you all have a wonderful day.